What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the lovely folks at Nerd Tees, and welcome to week 5 of my weekly CFL pick show for the 2018 CFL regular season. A little bit of a sore throat today, so if I'm a little abbreviated from other videos, then, well, you'll know why. Kind of treaded water last week for basically the third week in a row with the picks, but I did do pretty well on one of the betting sides. Straight up was only 2-2. That has us 10-6 straight up on the season. Against the spread, also 2-2. We're still under 500 there at 7-9, so we're still looking to turn that around. But went 3-1 on the over-under, and for somebody that traditionally struggles at over-under, you boys 10-6. Updating you now on the CFL standing, starting again in the East Division. Ottawa still sits up top with a 2-1 record, outscoring opponents 27-20. Hamilton, second place, 2-2 record, outscoring opponents 24-21. Toronto, 1-2 so far in the season, did get their first win, being outscored by opponents 28-15. Montreal bringing up the rear in not only the East Division, but the CFL in general, 1-3, being outscored 31-15. Out west, Calgary was off last week. They're still a perfect 3-0, leading the West Division, outscoring opponents 31-12 on average. So, look, they're a dominant football team. What else can you say? Then you got a bit of a log jam here at 2-2 in the West Division. You've got Saskatchewan, Edmonton, and Winnipeg all at 2-2. I give the bump to Winnipeg because they're outscoring their opponents 36-23. That's a 13-point differential in their scoring, despite the fact that they're only 2-2. Edmonton is even, scoring 28, giving up 28. And Saskatchewan, despite being 2-2, actually being outscored by their opponents on average 24-20. So far this season. BC bringing up the rear in the West Division, 1-2, being outscored 31-21. And similarly to how about a minute ago I told you I was probably going to be a little more abbreviated this week because of my throat, the CFL is a little abbreviated this week as well. Only 3 games on the week 5 schedule. You've got 3 teams that are on bye. There's a few of these weeks in the CFL season, so I thought what we would do is take these 3-game weeks and do something a little different with them. So this is the debut edition of the do's and don'ts version of the CFL Pick Show. You know that old Simpsons joke, don't do what Donnie don't does? That's basically what I'm shooting for here. And the week 5 schedule is basically all either rematches from last week or rematches from 2 weeks ago. You got Calgary going to Ottawa to take on the REDBLACKS. They played it in week 3. You've got Toronto going to Edmonton to play the Eskimos. They played last week. And you got Winnipeg going to BC to play the Lions, and they also played last week. So basically how this is going to work is for every team that we're going to talk about, again, there's only 6 of them, I got some do's and don'ts for them based on what they did last week, what they've done so far on the season, whatever it may be. I thought you guys needed a little break from just rattling off statistics to you all the time, so we're just taking a bit of a different approach to it. You know what? We're just going to have a little fun with the episode this week, so we're going to get right into it. We're going to start with that Calgary-Ottawa game rematch from week 3. So we'll start with Calgary. They were off last week, so they're coming off of that 24-14 win against the REDBLACKS in week 3. Again, they lead the West Division at 3-0. For Calgary, do stick with the pressure. In that week 3 game, the Calgary defense held Trevor Harris at quarterback for Ottawa to sub 50% passing, sub 150 yards, and forced him to throw an interception. That is all from pressure on the quarterback. They absolutely need to keep that up. Ottawa's a pretty good team, but man, if you don't give the quarterback any room to breathe, it's going to be a tough go. Also for Calgary, do keep running the rock. Don Jackson in that game from week 3, 15 carries, 84 yards, and a score. He currently sits 3rd in the CFL in rush yards with 294 in just 3 games. As of the end of that week 3 game, he was leading the CFL in rush yards. So this is one of the best running backs in the league. This is actually probably arguably the best running back matchup that we have in the CFL right now is Don Jackson and William Powell for Ottawa, who we'll get to. But of course, nobody is perfect. On Calgary's side, don't lose your discipline. In that Week 3 game, the Stampeders took 14 penalties. 7 of them came on offense. That's not going to be good enough most nights. Now, it was good enough 2 weeks ago. If you have a repeat performance of that, it's in Ottawa's building. They're going to take advantage of that. It's not going to be good enough the second time around. Let's go over to Ottawa's side now. Ottawa did play last week, coming off of a 28-18 win over Montreal. So we got 2 do's and a don't. For the Red Blacks, do feed the beast. And we're talking about William Powell, the CFL's leading rusher. He's averaging 118 yards per game so far on the season in just 3 games. Coming off 2 weeks ago, 13 carries for 123 yards that he put up on Calgary. Also for Ottawa, do spread the field. You're playing a really good defense on the other side. You have to get everybody involved, really spread your offense out to just get the defense guessing. Trevor Harris has completed passes to 8 different receivers over his last 2 games. And in those last 2 games, Sinopoly's got 15 catches. Greg Ellingson has 9. So they've got their high-end weapons, but they're also spreading the ball out very well. That needs to continue against Calgary. Really get the defense guessing, open up more holes, especially in the run game. And for Ottawa, don't lose at the line on offense. Going back to that Week 3 game against Calgary, they allowed 3 quarterback sacks. They allowed far too much pressure on Trevor Harris. That led to poor numbers. That led to Ottawa losing the game. They absolutely cannot lose with their offensive line against the defensive line, against the rush of the Calgary Stampeders. If Ottawa can win at the line on offense, they're going to be in really good shape. Ottawa comes into this game as a 3.5 point dog at home. Total in this game is set at 53.5 points. Calgary's obviously going to be the fresher team. Ottawa's coming in off of a win. I still think Calgary's the class of this league, so I'm still going to stick with the Stampeders, even though the game is in Ottawa. I think this is going to be a really tight game, but I'm going to go with Calgary. Let's take the Stampeders over the Red Blacks in Ottawa. On the line, man, 3.5 points, really not that much, especially for a team that's outscoring opponents by, what did we say? What was it? 31-12. So, 19 points. I'm going to have to take the -3.5. That's a close one, though. But let's go Calgary -3.5. And I think that game stays under 53.5 points. You've got the 2 best scoring defenses, I believe, in the CFL in this game. 53.5. I would have expected this number to be somewhere with a 4 in front of it. It's not, so let's stick under 53.5 points. Let's go to Edmonton now. We're going to have Eskimos playing host to the Argonauts, Edmonton hosting Toronto. Rematch from last week, where Toronto gets their first win of the season, beating Edmonton 20-17 in Toronto. So, if you're the Argonauts, do win the ground game. Last week, the Argos, as a team, ran the ball 29 times, put up $145 on the ground, and found the end zone twice. They only allowed 56 yards rushing to the Eskimos on 20 carries. That is less than 3 yards per carry. And even though they didn't win time of possession, when you can really control the run game, you control the game flow whether it feels like you are or not. If the other team knows they can't run the ball, that's a pretty good feather in your cap. Another do for the Argos is staying patient on defense. This is a really difficult thing to do against Edmonton because you've got Mike Riley, the most outstanding player in the league, the best quarterback in the league, maybe the best player in the whole league. He's going to be back there and he's going to get his numbers. And it's going to feel demoralizing, and he's going to have a good game, and he's going to score touchdowns. And it's not the easiest thing mentally to get over. But the Argos have to stay patient. They have to stay opportunistic on defense, because there will be opportunities in Mike Riley's free-flowing pass game. There will be opportunities for Toronto to take advantage of things. Look, the Argos had 4 pass knockdowns in that game last week. They had an interception. They also had a forced fumble. The opportunities will be there. You have to play opportunistic defense against a team that is better than you. But if you're the Argonauts, don't assume the same game plan is going to work 2 weeks in a row. I look at Mike Riley as basically like the Aaron Rodgers or Peyton Manning of the CFL. Not that they're equal in talent, but he's sort of the same type of player. He adjusts on the fly so quickly and game plans so meticulously. You don't become the most outstanding player in the league if you don't do that. So Toronto cannot assume that the exact same thing that they did last week is going to work again this week. Edmonton, not only are they at home, but they're going to adjust, and you're going to have to mix things up quite a bit if Toronto wants to stay competitive against, again, a team that is better than them. Now, if you're the Eskimos in this equation, you lost that game last week 20-17. It was a last-minute loss. The game was very close, pretty well the whole way through. If you're Edmonton, do protect the football. The Eskimos in that game last week had a fumble. Now, they did recover it, but Mike Riley threw the interception. They also had a turnover on downs. It's not good enough. You have to protect the football. You have to possess the football. You got to put up points, or you got to punt the thing away. You cannot afford to be lackadaisical or however you want to pronounce it with the football, not in pro football. Also, if you're Edmonton, don't lose focus. The Eskimos had 12 penalties in that game against Toronto. 7 of them came on offense, and that is evidence to me of a team that became disoriented, a team that started to panic, a team that lost focus. You cannot do that against the Argos. Even though the game is in your building, if you have a repeat performance of that, you're going to put the Argos in a position to upset you 2 weeks in a row. And if you're the Eskimos, don't forget who you are. You are a run and gun offense. You are the best pass offense in this league. You are high pressure when you don't have the football. Get in the Argos' face, win at the line, play your high pressure game. Don't be afraid of just embracing who you are. You are run and gun. Let's see it. Edmonton comes into this football game as 7.5-point favorites at home despite the loss last week, with the total in the game being set at 53. You know, I got to take the Eskimos here. Again, they are the better team than Toronto, and now the game is in Edmonton, so that is a big bump. So I'm going to take the Eskimos here to win this football game, but based off the fact that Toronto did beat them last week, I'm going to take the Argos plus 7.5 on the line because I think the game, even though Edmonton will win it, I think the game stays close, and I think the game stays under the total. Total's 53. I think it stays under that. They just played a game where they only put up 37. You still don't know what you're going to get week in, week out from Toronto's offense. So, look, I got to stay under on it. I think Edmonton wins the game, but I think Toronto covers the points. Before we get to our last game of the week, of course, this is the time when I take the time to plug my friends, not at Starbucks Shanghai, but at Nerd Teas. And today's blend is the lemon ginger, obviously where my throat's not feeling the greatest. Get that nice lemon taste, that nice ginger feeling, soothe the throat. Whenever I'm not feeling good, this is what I immediately run to, is this lemon ginger blend. It's tasty, it's delicious. Just like everything that you can find at nerdteas.ca. Use promo code BWFinest. Save yourself 15% at checkout. Free shipping in Canada on any order over $50. You get a great bounce on the US dollar in the conversion. Never been a better time. nerdteas.ca. Promo code BWFinest. And our last game of the week sees a rematch from last week's game, Winnipeg versus BC. This time the game happening out west in BC. Winnipeg won that game last week in Winnipeg 41-19. So we'll start with the Blue Bombers. Obviously that's a big win. You got a couple of do's here for them. If you're the Blue Bombers, do keep insulating Matt Nichols until he's 100% back up to speed. If you didn't know, Matt Nichols returned after his, I believe it was a head injury. But what they did is they did a good job of insulating Matt Nichols. Chris Strevler, who played really well in Nichols' absence, came in. He had 5 set passing plays. He had 5 set designed quarterback runs. So you're able to insulate your starting quarterback who's just coming back from an injury. Don't put him out there for a full game. Winnipeg did not do that. If you're Winnipeg, I think you got to do that again this week. Also doesn't hurt that Chris Strevler scored 2 rushing touchdowns in that game. And if you're the Blue Bombers, do ball hawk on defense. And this is all about who the opposing quarterback is. The Blue Bombers had 3 interceptions last week, 2 of them coming off of the hand of Jonathon Jennings. As I mentioned, he's an interception per game on average quarterback. I mentioned that in the video last week. So look, you have to ball hawk on defense. You have to be sitting there on those routes. You know he's going to be throwing up ducks. But if you are Winnipeg, don't succumb to overconfidence. And this, I think, is the biggest key factor in whether or not Winnipeg wins this game as well. Look, you're coming in here against a team that you just beat by, 22 points? So you got to be feeling good. You got your starting quarterback back. You're looking ahead. And that's something that you absolutely cannot do if you are the Blue Bombers. In that game last week, the Blue Bombers threw up 3 passes. I believe all 3 of them were from Nichols that were knocked down. If you're overconfident, those 3 knockdowns can turn into 3 interceptions quicker than a hiccup. So you cannot be overconfident coming into this game. Just play your game. You know you're a better team than BC, but if you succumb to overconfidence, especially where you're in their building, they could come up and strike. Just look at Toronto last week. Now, if you're the BC Lions, do feed your running backs in both phases. If you're the Lions, I think you have to commit to the run. They had 4.5 yards per carry in that game last week. You can run on this Blue Bombers defense. I think they need to commit to the run game and commit to those short yardage, high percentage check down passes from Jennings to the running backs. Because if you do that enough, Blue Bombers defense is going to pinch, and then you can go over the top. Well, you can try to if you don't throw interceptions. But if you're the BC Lions, don't sit back and wait defensively. First of all, your defense isn't good enough to sit back and wait defensively. But look, you've got nothing to lose in this game by bringing the house. Rushing 5, rushing 6. Rush more than they can block. Take your chances in the secondary. You got nothing to lose. You got to play like you've got nothing to lose. And final thought, and you know what? I've been picking on him all season, really, Jonathon Jennings. But don't fear ripping off the Band-Aid. If Travis Lulay is capable and ready, get Jennings out of there. Because Travis Lulay, even though he's 34, gives your team a better chance to win, in my humble opinion, than Jonathon Jennings does right now. Whether it's up here or it's physical, who knows? But if Travis Lulay is capable, and look, you get behind in this football game, you cannot be afraid to rip the Band-Aid off and say, Jennings, you're out. Travis, you're in. Get us back in this football game. This is the first CFL game that we've looked at this season where there is no line right now. And that's because, I can only assume, of all the quarterbacking issue controversy, really for both teams. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to update you on those numbers when the numbers release and my picks. What I'll do is I'll put those in the comment section below and I'll pin them to the top of the comment section. So once those picks are there, you'll be able to see them. I am going to take Winnipeg to win this game, even though the game's in BC. Look, the Lions are just not a good football team. So, look, they've done it once. They won a game, but what was that game? Was against Montreal, wasn't it? So I'm going to have to go Winnipeg in this game. I'll take Winnipeg on the spread, likely by anything, probably anything under a touchdown. If you get a number like 55 or 56, take the under on it. If it's a low 50, you might want to consider going over because, they just went for 60 last week. All right, folks, those are your Week 5 games in the CFL. We'll go over my picks here with you one more time in only the 3 games. I've got Calgary going to Ottawa and beating the REDBLACKS. I'm going to take Calgary minus 3.5 on the line in a game that stays under 53.5 points. I got Edmonton at home to beat Toronto, but I do have Toronto covering plus 7.5 on the line in a game that stays under 53 points. And I am going to take the Winnipeg Blue Bombers over the BC Lions. No spread and no total in that game yet. So, like I say, I'll pin those in the comments section, but we don't have any numbers yet. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the Week 5 episode of the 2018 CFL Pick Show. Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Enjoy the games in Week 5. For my American friends, I hope you're watching. I think we've picked up a few, and what I'm definitely picking up are subscribers. So I love that you guys seem to be enjoying this, and it feels pretty good. I think I might keep doing this all season.